Okay, let's see if we can clear up some of the confusion around linear and vertical pairs. So the basis of the idea of linear pairs is what you have is you have two lines that cross each other. Okay, so let's look at this line that I've now traced in blue. Okay, if we were to go ahead and ignore anything that is on the bottom right side of that, you will see we have two angles. We have angle CAB, which is this guy right here. And then we have angle CAD, which is this one over here. These two are called a linear pair. In the word linear, we see the word line. And how that helps us to remember is that the outside of those two angles form a straight line. Okay, so let's go ahead and find a different linear pair. Well, let's take the line that has C, A, and E in it. All right, that means we're going to ignore anything that is on the bottom left. And we can see that CAD and DAE are linear pairs. We could still look at CAE, but this time let's ignore everything that is above CAE. And what we'll notice is that CAB and BAE are a linear pair. So when it has a question such as this, and it's asking us which one are linear pairs, we have to be pretty careful. So DAE is right there, and EAD, excuse me, we'll try that again. DAE is right there, and then we have EAD. Well, EAD is exactly the same one, so that's certainly not one of our pairs. Okay, let's try the next one. BAC. All right, that's that guy right there. And then CAD is over here. So we have those two angles marked. And what we want to see is the outside edge of both angles, does that form a straight line? Yes, it does. All right, next pair. BAE. BAE is right there. And then we have EAD, which is that one right there. So again, let's look at that outside edge. And does the outside edge form a straight line? Yes, it does. All right, next pair. EAD again. And this time we have DAC. Let's trace that outside edge. Sure enough, that forms another straight line. And our last choice, we have CAE. Wait a second. CAE is a straight line. So BAD is the other straight line. So all that has done is defined two straight lines for us. So those can't be linear pairs. All right. The next thing I want us to focus on are vertical pairs. Okay, so vertical pairs are the pairs that are on opposite sides of the straight lines. So looking here, we have CAB, which is right there in blue, and the pair that is opposite is DAE. Well, we have another pair of vertical angles. We have CAD, which is marked in green, and the angle that corresponds to, or is the other pair for our our vertical pair, is BAE. And so you can see that pair marked in green. All right. So when we want to look at linear pairs, I'm going to mark these in different colors. So here's BAC. The linear pair with BAC is CAD. The other thing I want you to know is that we have a linear pair on this side over here with BAE. Okay, if I have DAE, which is this guy right here, the linear pair could involve CAD up there, or it could involve BAE down there. All right, vertical pairs. Vertical pairs are on opposite sides. So we have CAB and DAE. We have another vertical pair in CAD and BAE. The hardest part when it comes to these vertical pairs is identifying when we have something in there that changes the way we have to look at it. So what I mean by that is, let's go ahead and look right here at this ray that I've highlighted in yellow. Notice that is not a line, it is just a ray. All right, and most of the time what happens is we see that ray and that messes everything up for us, and it makes it much harder for us to see our vertical pairs and our linear pairs. So when you have a ray stuck in your drawing like that, you're going to have to just pretend it doesn't exist, because that is not going to be a part of linear pairs or vertical pairs. So if we go ahead and we ignore the highlighted line, we can see that CAB and BAE are a linear pair. Okay, if we're talking about our vertical pairs, I could see that BAE, again, I'm ignoring the ray AF, BAE has a vertical pair over there with CAD. Now that we can identify linear pairs and vertical pairs, we have to understand what that means in terms of measurements. So the thing with linear pairs is if the outside edge forms a straight line, that means that the sum of our linear pairs is 180 degrees, because the measure of a straight line is 180 degrees. So if we wanted to find out what the measure of angle 4 is, well, I'll go ahead and measure this, I'll go ahead and name this X. So what I know is that 54 plus X, whatever that angle is going to be 180 degrees, because we have a pair that are linear. Well, using my algebraic solving steps, I can go ahead and solve for X, and what I figure out is that angle 4 is 126 degrees. Okay, well, let's say I'm trying to figure out what angle 2 is. Well, I could go ahead and look at the linear pair on the bottom side of that and do exactly the same process, and once again I would end up with 126. Well, I'm going to switch over here to green. If I figured out that the angle 4 is 126, and I want to look at the angles above my line, looking at angles 3 and 4, well, I could use exactly the same process, and I could figure out that, well, this angle right here is 54 degrees, because 180 minus 126 gives me 54. So through this, what we have learned is that vertical pairs are equal. All right, so these two that are straight across from each other are going to be equal. So angle 4 is the measure of angle 4 is going to be equal to the measure of angle 2. All right, and the measure of angle 3 is going to be 54 degrees, because we were told that the vertical angle was 54 degrees. Sometimes you're given you're given problems that have only variables, and you have to figure out what to do with them. Well, our first step, let's look at the one on the left. And what we have is we're going to identify that this right here is a straight line. Well, if that is a straight line, then I know it is a linear pair. And I know that a linear pair has a sum of 180 degrees. So I have to be able to identify which are linear and which are vertical. The outside edge forms that straight line. These are linear, So that tells me that 2x plus 3x plus 5 is going to be 180 degrees. My solving steps tell me to combine my like terms. And then I'm going to go ahead and solve by subtracting 5 from both sides. I want x, not 5x, so I divide by 5. And that gives me 35. So that means x is 35. If you are being asked for x, you get to stop there. But if you're being asked for the degrees, well, then you have to come back to the original statement and plug in what you discovered x to be. And the correct answer would be 75 degrees up there. And down here, the correct answer would be 105 degrees. All right, the next thing we need to do is to be able to identify what we have are vertical pairs. Okay, so notice right here what we are given is we are given these angles that are across from each other. We know that vertical pairs are equal. So if they are equal, we then can set up an equation that has these two statements equal to each other. And now we can use our algebraic solving steps to go ahead and solve the equation. Again, we end up with being able to get to the point where we have x equals. If the question is asking what is the angle equal to, we have more work to do. So we would need to plug it back in, and we would be able to find 29. Well, for angle 1, let me double check to make sure I've done the right thing, and let me plug it into angle 3, and again, we get 29. That is enough information for us to also figure out what angles 2 and 4 are. Because I can use the idea of linear pairs to find out what 2 and 4 are. So I would know that 29 plus x is 180, and I'm going to go ahead and try to find that guy right there. So as I go through my solving steps, I end up with 151, and that is the measure of 2 and 4. I hope this is helpful. Please let me know if you have more questions.